All right, and we are live, guys. I'm so excited to have Kimberly here today. As you guys know, we're doing a deep dive into sleep, and Kimberly is very knowledgeable on this topic, and we're hitting it from a different angle. So we're going to talk about Ayurveda as well, which is something that I am not an expert on, hence why we have her on today. So Kimberly, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. Can you tell us a little bit about who you are and some of your background?
Sure. Yeah, my name is Kimberly Kubicke, and I am an Ayurveda practitioner. I work with women online to help them harness their body's potential to thrive using the oldest system of medicine in the world, Ayurveda,
Mhm.
which is basically the traditional medicine of India, in the same way that traditional Chinese medicine is the traditional medicine of China.
Mhm.
I personally encountered Ayurveda back in 2001 when I was struggling with some chronic health issues
Okay.
and brought it into my life with a few simple, easy changes to my daily habits and a new awareness of my body. I was able to resolve, for the most part, lifelong health issues and was just astounded by the power of this science. So I began studying it myself back then. And since then, I've studied with amazing teachers and practitioners in the field, such as Dr. Vasant Lad, Dr. Claudia Welsh, Amadea Morningstar. And I've really honed in on, yeah, working with women around hormones, digestion. Sleep is something that comes up frequently in regards to both of those things. So I'm excited to be here with you today and
Mm.
share.
Yay. Okay, so a little bit more into Ayurveda. So what does that, for people who don't know, and because I'm not an expert with that, what does that entail? What does Ayurveda look like?
So Ayurveda literally means the
Ayurveda.
science of life. Um, yeah, no worries. I think most people say it wrong when they first look at it. It's not an intuitive word on how you pronounce it. But it's literally, it translates to the science of life. And so it's a sister science of yoga. It focuses on basically how we can preserve the health of our physical body to the fullest extent so that we can live as rich a life as possible and share our unique gifts with the
Mm,
world.
that's good.
So it really takes a personalized approach. It doesn't believe in, a one size fits all remedy for any condition, really. We always want to look at the individual and get to the root cause of their particular imbalance or disorder and remove that root cause rather than just mask it with medication so that you
Mhm.
don't feel the symptoms anymore. And it's interesting because lots of new trends these days
Yeah.
in holistic health seem very inspired by Ayurveda. They're taking this perspective as well. So Ayurveda has a unique lens of analysis, particularly for the Western mind, and it looks a lot at the context and patterns. Whereas, with Western medicine, we really like focus in on, you have this one symptom going on, and well, let's look at the organ that involves that symptom and really hone in on that. But Ayurveda is like, let's take a look at your whole life and what are all the factors that can be contributing here.
Okay.
And so yeah, so it also, I would say, one of the cornerstones of it is this idea of duality. And many of us might be familiar with that concept somewhat peripherally through Chinese medicine, through the idea of yin and yang, that there are things that are very nourishing and building and things that are very depleting and stimulating. And our body is always looking to balance those two
Mhm.
forces.
Mhm.
Ayurveda also brings in the concept of dosha, which there's three doshas, and there are three energetic forces that govern all of life.
Mhm.
And very briefly, each of those forces we could summarize as being: one is movement, one is
Mhm.
transformation, and one is growth.
Mhm.
And those three energies combine in a unique cocktail for each of us giving us certain strengths and certain weaknesses. And so getting to know our body type and understanding it more deeply sort of clues us into, what we're going to be more susceptible to and how we can kind of buffer ourselves from that.
Very interesting. Okay, so looking at that, then how does Ayurveda sort of support healthy sleep? How does it help somebody coming in and they're like, okay, Kimberly, I'm struggling with sleep. I don't sleep very well. I'm a light sleeper. It takes me a long time to get to sleep. I'm assuming you're going to say, based on what you said about the 3 doshas, you're going to be looking at the entire picture. So how do you approach that from an Ayurvedic perspective?
Yeah. So, I mean, when I work with clients one-on-one, I do a pretty extensive intake and gather a lot of information. And then generally we categorize poor sleep is usually a problem resulting from 2 out of those 3 energies. Vata is one of the doshas, the dosha that's associated with movement. And so that one is a very likely culprit in terms of poor sleep. Pitta is another one of the doshas that's associated with transformation and can also be involved in sleep issues. And so once we kind of trace things, when we get a sense of the person's body type and the different factors in their life that are contributing to their poor sleep, we can categorize them into one of those 2 doshas usually. And then Ayurveda has a list of protocols that we can employ to sort of pacify each of those doshas. So if it's a Vata problem, we take one approach. If it's a Pitta problem, we take a different approach. And for some folks, both of the doshas are involved. And so we kind of combine, we synthesize the approaches in a personalized way that's going to bring them the most health.
Okay, so what would an approach look like? So maybe choose one of the doshas, yeah?
Yeah.
And what would an approach look like?
So when poor sleep is attributed to Vata, an imbalance in Vata dosha, it's usually due to overstimulation and a lack of self-care. Vata folks are very sensitive and their attention is usually easily pulled in lots of directions. And so oftentimes what they need to do is really recenter and limit the amount of stimulation that they have going on in a day and particularly at night. And, we can kind of, and so then through diet and lifestyle, there are a number of ways that we can kind of bring Vata back into balance. Eating really nourishing and grounding foods like animal proteins, root vegetables, whole grains, good quality fats, and really taking stock of where we're allowing our senses to go throughout the day, and touching in on what's adding more stress, what's adding more depleting stimulation to us, and what's adding more nourishing qualities to us. And with Vata, we need to invoke a lot of that nourishment. So that's, the Vata type sleep issue is usually because of overstimulation, too much, being on the go for too long, and not refueling our body with the nourishment it needs to sustain that being on the go. With Pitta, go ahead.
So in terms of, because that sounds like me right now.
Yeah.
Really like lots going on. So if somebody came to you and said, okay, Kimberly, I think they did their assessment and they're like a Vata person, or what's the word I'm looking for? Prototype, that's the wrong word, or they come under that category, right?
Yeah.
Classification. How long does it take for changes to occur? Because I'm assuming this is also being built into sort of a lifestyle approach. So it's not something that happens overnight, because it's looking at lifestyle, diet, self-care, which is everything that I love and I talk about. So it's more of a holistic approach over time for them to see changes with sleep. Yeah.
So it It often depends on the person and how long the issue has been going on. If it's something they've been dealing with their entire life, it's probably going to take a little bit of a longer time to completely resolve. If it's something that's just popped up in the last few months, it's probably going to take less time. And generally speaking, because Vata dosha is so sensitive and reactive, that dosha usually swings out of balance the easiest, but is also brought back into balance the easiest because it's very responsive. So, I've had some clients where within 3 weeks of working together and employing the recommendations we come up with, they notice a marked improvement in their sleep.
That's really good. That's quick. It's very quick. Okay.
Yeah.
And is it the Pitta?
Yeah, Pitta is the other type the other dosha that can throw off our sleep. And usually with Pitta, it's more because of the intellect and like a domination of will. Their mind is very focused and active, and they can't let go of problem solving. They wake up thinking about stuff, whereas Vata just kind of wakes up and is restless. Pitta wakes up and they're thinking about stuff. They're like, this project at work, I've got to figure this out. I've got to get to the bottom of this. Vata types will usually wake between 2 and 6 a.m. That's the Vata, one of the Vata times of day. Whereas Pitta types will usually wake between 12 and 2 a.m., which is more of a Pitta time of day. And with Pitta, with Vata folks, they'll usually lay in bed and just, feel restless in bed. Pitta will actually get up and start working on stuff, jump on their computer, like, let me get some stuff done. I'm not going to waste any time here. Pitta is very efficient, very focused, has a massive to-do list and the will to just, conquer that no matter what. So with Pitta, they usually need to employ a little bit more gentleness and, create a healthy boundary and separation from their agenda and take time for self-care.
Okay. And what was the last dosha?
The last dosha is Kapha Dosha, which is the dosha that governs growth and nourishment. And usually Kapha folks don't have any trouble falling asleep. In fact, if they have their problem is more hypersomnia, where they sleep too much. And for them, what can be challenging around sleep is actually getting up in the morning. And so with that, we usually would approach it more, with looking at their meal time the night before, having a really light and early dinner, so that their hunger kind of wakes them up. And also, in the morning time, we would bring in more kind of stimulation, like some hot water with fresh ginger and black pepper, and maybe some vigorous breathing exercises to really get them feeling alive and awake. But usually, sound sleep is Kapha, they say, can just sleep on, a dirt floor anywhere at any time of day. So they're not usually plagued with sleep issues.
Okay, cool. That's really interesting. I've not ever really touched Ayurveda at all, but it sounds like a whole new world of so many things that you can it's almost like self-exploration on a very deep and personal level. It's really interesting. Okay, so can you talk to me about your thoughts on, for example, people who are light sleepers or who have quite vivid dreams? What are your recommendations to support that? Because I've got some clients who very, very light sleepers. If the children wake, they're up, difficulty going back to bed, or I'm a very vivid dreamer. Like, I am in a different world every night, getting into some sort of an adventure.
Okay, yeah.
Wake up shattered. So what are your thoughts and recommendations to people like that?
So as I mentioned earlier, you're going to want to be very careful about sensory input, and particularly in the 4 hours leading up to bedtime. Vata needs a lot of babying and self-care, more so than the other doshas. The other doshas are a little more resilient, whereas Vata is very sensitive. So you're going to want to make sure that you have electronics shut down at least 2 hours before you're going to go to bed. Another really simple practice that you can do is oiling the head and the feet before bed. So usually the best oil for Vata types is sesame oil, raw sesame oil, just, that you would get to cook with and eat.
Okay.
And just massaging the head and the feet before bed, and particularly the big toe and toenail, according to Ayurveda. That helps. It's like a balm. It's like you're putting this giant blanket over your brain and just, shutting everything out. So that can be a nice way to ease into sleep and ensure sound sleep. Depending on, for moms of young kids, you can't exactly put in earplugs and a white noise machine and wear an eye mask and just drown everything out. But if you are not a mom with young kids and you've got these issues, that's an option too. If part of why you're waking up throughout the night is your young kid, you might try massaging their head and feet with some oil before bed to help them sleep soundly also.
That's interesting. I would have never ever thought about that. So why sesame oil though? That just out of interest, is it anything to do with like the properties of sesame oil as opposed to like maybe like an olive or like a jojoba or something like that?
Yeah, so sesame oil, according to Ayurveda, is the most penetrating oil. It really sinks into the tissues the most deeply. It's generally warming, which is usually pacifying to Vata. Vata is generally cold, whereas Pitta is generally hot. So, and Pitta is usually, and Vata is also very dry. They're kind of like frayed, and their nervous system too is a little bit frayed. So oil is usually a lot of oil in the diet, and then oil on the skin helps to pacify the nervous system. And sesame oil is warming, it's thick, penetrating. And so that's why we usually favor that one for Vata. If you're interested in experimenting with this for yourself, the general categories is that I recommend to clients are sesame oil, coconut oil, or olive oil. Coconut oil is cooling, so usually good for Pitta. Olive oil is more neutral and a little bit lighter, usually good for Kapha. But what you can do to see what your body is most receptive to is just do a little sample test on your skin of each type. And whichever one sinks into your skin most quickly is the one that your body just wants to eat up. And that's a good one for you to try.
That's an interesting tip. I'm going to order sesame oil today. Back on Amazon. It's so cool.
Keep me posted. Let me know.
100% will. Because I read a long time ago about sesame oil being really good for the hair, but I don't really like sesame seeds or anything like that. So I was just like, but now having this conversation with you, it goes beyond the seed. It's a whole. It makes sense if it transcribes into better sleep. I mean, that's sleep so nourishing and rejuvenating for the system. It makes a lot of sense. I'll revisit that definitely. Right, next question. What are your thoughts on napping? Because I'm a big napper. I maybe because I dream so vividly and sometimes I wake up, tired, or I've got a lot on with work, and I don't get enough sleep, or I'm overstimulated because I don't start shutting down 4 hours before bed at all. And I lay in bed trying to shut off, but you fall into that like social media trap or just lying down thinking. The next day I plan a nap. Some people are like, well, no, you shouldn't nap because it throws your sleep cycle off. Others over nap and then they wake up feeling quite tired and almost sickly. So what are your thoughts on napping?
Yeah, so a 5 to 20-minute power nap in the afternoon, especially in the summertime, is okay for folks struggling with a lack of sleep. Folks who are more Vata types, or new moms, or someone who's gone through a very stressful time in life, or is experiencing severe depletion for one reason or another. It's not a good long-term solution to take a nap beyond 5 to 20 minutes every day. But a 5 to 20 minute refresh, that can be fine for Vata folks. much more than that, and you kind of throw off your biorhythms. And if you perpetually day sleep in times other than the summer, summer siesta time, that's considered okay from an Ayurvedic perspective. But if you're napping a lot in the day, you'll probably notice a sense of heaviness and a lack of energy. When you wake up, you're not necessarily feeling refreshed and alive. You feel like, wow, I can't wait to get back to bed. So something that I often recommend folks try instead is a yoga nidra practice. And to do that between 2 to 6 p.m. To kind of get a little reset. Yoga nidra, science has found that yoga nidra can be the equivalent of up to 4 hours of sleep. It can recharge your body. Yeah.
Oh.
And there's actually the Yoga Nidra network. If you Google that, they have free downloads of Yoga Nidra practices. And for those who don't know, it's just a really relaxed yoga practice where you're lying on your yoga mat still, and it's kind of a guided meditation through the body. And different folks take it in different directions, but it's really geared toward setting your system up to relax. And I think it's a wonderful practice for Vata types in general, just to be able to really hone that within themselves, because their propensity, their tendency is to go to like alert and, on edge. And so this sort of takes it in the opposite direction, again, working with that duality, that concept in Ayurveda. So yeah, that's what I would recommend as a little afternoon reset instead of just totally going to sleep.
Question. So first question, napping 5 to 20 minutes, 100% on board with that in the summertime. But what happens to winter? Why not in winter?
Yeah, well, usually in the winter, we have so much darkness, in the nighttime, that you should be able to ideally get to bed pretty early and get a long period of sleep during the dark hours. Summer, our window of darkness is a lot shorter. And the heat, depending on what you do, a lot of us now, live and work in air conditioning, and we're pretty shielded from the elements. But Ayurveda is thousands and thousands of years old, long before air conditioning. And so summer, it's really draining if you work some kind of job outdoors and are in the sun all day. It saps a lot of your energy. So, by 2 o'clock, it's usually, you're much more exhausted if you've been outside all day in the summer. Then in the wintertime, we're a little bit more still and huddled in and keeping warm in one way or another. So we don't need as much rest. Also, our bodies are, from an Ayurvedic perspective, our immunity, our strength is stronger in the winter because we have more of that dark time, that nourishing time. Again, this idea of duality. Whereas in the summer, it's so bright and stimulating, and there's so much going on, and everything's blooming, and there's all this activity. So it's easier to become worn out and exhausted.
I would have thought about it the complete other way. That's really interesting. This is why I like having conversations like this, because I thought that, in the summertime, you've got sunshine, and to me, well, I tend to slow down in the summertime, but then again, equally speaking, the wintertime, it does get darker sooner, but I would have assumed that people tend to get more ill towards the wintertime, but from an Ayurvedic perspective, it's completely different. Very interesting.
Yeah. My partner is a landscaper and has a native plant nursery. And so he is like out all day in the summer, working hard, doing a lot of manual labor. And it really, observing him, it really brought it to life for me, because I thought the same thing too when I heard it, like, oh, summertime, everyone takes a vacation, you're off school, your work schedule's a little bit, more laid back. And that's what our modern day reality is. And so there is, when I work with individuals, we consider all of that. But in general, that amount of stimulation is ultimately depleting on the system.
It makes sense. That just makes sense. Hence why the napping
Yeah.
is perfect. I like that. That's a perfect explanation. So another question, sort of a sidetrack. Yoga Nidra, could you use that for children or no? For children?
Yeah, definitely, definitely. I mean, if they will stay still for it, depending on their age, if they'll lay still, for sure you could try it with that. And there's that Yoga Nidra network has a whole range of practices. I mean, some Yoga Nidras are 35, 40 minutes. Some can be as short as 10 minutes. You could even do one as short as 5 minutes. So depending on the age and attention span and willingness, yeah. And it could be a nice thing to do to kind of lay down in bed with your child and do it together, kind of like your story time or something. Like, let's lay down and do this practice and get into a relaxation mode so we sleep well.
I love that. I might actually try that with Philly. I like that. Okay. Sleep hygiene, what is it and why is it important? And talk to me about it from like an Ayurvedic perspective.
Yeah, so good sleep hygiene is all about putting yourself in the best position to sleep well, sort of setting the stage for great sleep. And it encompasses your environment, the setting that you're going to sleep in, your bedroom, your locale, how you have things set up in there, as well as your habits throughout the day, and particularly as you get closer to sleep, and a nighttime routine. And this all aligns beautifully with Ayurveda. The body thrives on routine to maintain balance from an Ayurvedic perspective. The more predictable you keep your days and your activities, the easier the body's job is to keep you in balance. And I love it. It reinforces this concept that is celebrated in Ayurveda, that wellness comes from these small decisions we make and the habits that we have and reinforce on a daily basis. It's not like this big decision, oh, I'm going to be vegetarian or vegan, and now I'm going to be healthy. But it's all these little micro things that we decide in a day. Is this going to serve my health or not? Is this the best thing for me or not?
Love that. Love that.
Yeah.
I'm going to use that. It's the small decisions. 100% going to use that. Okay. So let's dive a little bit deeper into that. What does the ideal environment look like to support good sleep from an Ayurvedic perspective?
So yeah, your bedroom, well, ideally, okay, first off, when there's sleep issues, we need to look at the life. Living a life that you love is going to be probably the biggest factor in determining whether you sleep well.
That's a big one. That's a huge one because many people aren't. That's a big one. So if you're not living the life that you love and it's not possible for you to do that, then I guess your sleep's frigged for until you make that change.
We can feel that way. It's easy to feel that way, to feel defeated. But I think what you can do, what I work with clients a lot to do is really like, let's lay out what are your biggest stressors in life. Is there wiggle room with any of them? Is there something that you could cut out of your life? Like just stop volunteering at that thing, or, leave the PTA, or whatever it is that you feel like, I'm doing this thing and I hate doing it.
Yeah.
Take it out of your life if you can. It's not serving you. It's not serving the people around you. And the other thing is to look at, so that's your stressors. Those are, again, in this idea of duality, the depleting things, the stimulating things, the things that drain you of your energy. And then look at what are your greatest sources of support in life, the things that nourish you, the things that replenish you. And can we add more emphasis in those areas? Can we build those up in some ways? And I find that usually people have, more room for improvement than they initially think on first assessment. So yeah, really picking that apart in a constructive way to kind of recalibrate. But if folks are stuck in a situation that is really not serving them, it's going to be hard to get their sleep to be great. I mean, I find that that's a lot of times at the heart of some sleep issues. So as much as you can, living a life that you love.
Okay.
Exercise is going to be a big part of, I guess that's more of like a habit, a daily routine activity. But if you're not getting enough exercise, if you're not using your body physically enough in a day, it's going to be hard to get tired and go to sleep at night. And, for a lot of us, we have sedentary jobs and sit all day at a desk and then sit in our car to drive home from the desk. And, and then we're eating dinner and then sitting on the couch. And so that's going to present sleep issues. In terms of the actual environment, you want your bedroom to be, as much of a sanctuary as possible. So having it be nice and dark, if you can get like room darkening curtains to really create a dark space. This is especially useful for Pitta types. Pitta types are generally very sensitive to light. Really closing out the sound as much as you can, whether it be, a white noise machine or earplugs, or just, asking other people in your household to be considerate of that, so that you've got good quiet and going to sleep. Building a healthy relationship with light. So waking with the sun, being awake during the sun hours, and then winding down when it gets dark, and not thinking, oh, I'm going to write this, 20-page paper at 8 o'clock after I put my kids to bed. Like that's going to be too stimulating for that time of day. Yeah. And limiting your activities, ideally limiting your activities in your bedroom to just being sleep, and maybe sex, but not, not working in your bedroom, not watching TV in your bedroom. But that's a place where your body knows, when I go in here, it's calm, it's quiet, it's dark, it's cool. That's another thing that usually helps to support good sleep, is a cool environment. So making sure it's adequately ventilated and kept at the right temperature, and really allowing that to be like this sanctuary. And particularly when you have sleep issues, I think, after you work with these things for a while and you develop healthy habits, healthy routine, it's not like you're going to have to be so careful for the rest of your life. But if you're struggling with sleep, to really give it, a full on go for a good 3 months and say, yeah, I'm not going to work in my bedroom. I'm going to do that, in another part of the house. And my room is just going to be for quiet activities and a soothing space.
I like that a lot. Okay, so you talked about sex. Let's talk about that a little bit. What is, or how does sleep impact your libido? What's your experience on that? And if you're finding that it is having a negative impact on your libido, like your sex drive, maybe you're not in the mood, or it's impacting other functions with it, what are your recommendations or your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so the body will always prioritize stress hormones over sex hormones in order to ensure our survival. So if we're living in this chronic state of stress because of, we're living a life that we don't love, or there's some, force in our life that's causing a bunch of stress, it's gonna tax our sex hormones and our libido, especially for women, because men, their sex hormones are, testosterone is a stimulating, activating hormone. It's a lot more like stress hormones than estrogen or progesterone, which are much more cooling, calming, nourishing hormones. So for women, it usually hits a lot harder. And the body will, in fact, even turn sex hormones into stress hormones to supplement a stressful lifestyle or mindset.
Really?
Yeah. The body will turn progesterone into cortisol if it doesn't have a good supply of cortisol. So
okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, it is. And that's what we see, when I work with a lot of women with hormone issues, and that's what we see, is that they're catering to a lot of other folks' needs in their life and not taking care of themselves and living in this state of stress. And then, over time, the adrenals get taxed because we're we're stressed out chronically and they can't get a break. And so then it also feeds kind of, we sort of like wear this groove in our brain that everything is stress, you know, we're like looking for stress at every angle, even though, so we perceive even benign kind of events as being stressful. And oh my gosh, you know, the phone's ringing. It must be something scary when it's, you know, it's just your mom calling to check in or something. So we come back to this in terms of libido, we can kind of come back to this notion of duality and what's nourishing versus depleting. And sleep is nourishing. And so if we're not getting enough sleep, the body doesn't have the reserves it needs to create sex hormones. It's more just in survival mode. And we're not thinking, you know, oh, where's Romeo, when we're just like like hanging on for dear life. We're not looking to like have a candlelit dinner.
Yeah. That's an interesting thing. Can I ask a question with that?
Yeah.
So, because there are a couple of things that you said that were really interesting. I'm going to try and stay on topic as much as possible, but really interesting. So one, a lot of the women that I'm coming into contact with now are what I would, from what you said, defined as or described as chronically stressed, right? Doing everything for everyone else, and not taking care of them. And a lot of them, when you talk to them about sleep is not happening on a nourishing and a deep level, which is why I wanted to dive into this topic. And then so what happens is that you see the hormonal imbalances occur, difficulty losing weight, the cravings, you know, really intensified. What's the other thing that happens? Self-love, self-care goes out the door, the emotions are all over the place. But then when you look at the impact of that, you know, feeling tired and snappy, not connecting to anybody, far less self. And when you look at their lives, they're not really living a life where they feel happy and satisfied. This is why I find this is so interesting, where when you talk about wellness, it has got to be like a holistic approach, because every part impacts the other, right? But then you look at the relationship of a woman to her husband, or her partner, and sex is important, right? I feel like from what I know of it in my very limited experience as a human being, I haven't lived a long time, I'm not a guru, but I would look at sex as something as being pleasurable. It bonds, it relaxes. How then, or where does it fit into somebody's life? How is it prioritized into somebody's life if they're not sleeping? I know we're a little bit off topic, but would you say it's a woman, go have more sex because it relaxes you, it calms you down, it bonds you, it releases all those beautiful hormones? Well, what would your approach be with that?
Well, you know, from an Ayurvedic perspective, sex, reproduction is kind of last on the list of the body's priorities.
On the list.
You gotta have everything else in alignment. Like we look at this succession of tissue development and generation in the body in Ayurveda, and sort of a unique hierarchy. And sex is at the top. It's like the creme de la creme. Everything else needs to be in place in order for the body to feel like, yeah, I can give life to another body because I'm solid, I'm good, I'm ready. And if we don't have that, then it's you know, our body is kind of in this in some level of a survival mode where I just need to take care of myself. I'm just maintaining. I don't have it to give to somebody else. And that's, you know, self-preservation. So
Can I ask a question there?
yeah, please.
So I know we're going way off topic, Kimberly, but so sorry, because this is so interesting.
No, it's great.
So what you've just said there, because with sex being sort of last, I mean, if you're looking at it from a biological point of view, it makes sense, because sex is, you know, then therefore just meant for you to reproduce, right? Mm-hmm. Chronic stress, a woman who's having difficulty conceiving, is that the link?
A lot of times, yeah. I mean, certainly there can be other factors involved.
The main link, yeah.
toxins, hormones in food, all kinds of other things, too much time on the computer, light, light can play a big role in hormone health also. If somebody works nights or, doesn't sleep well and is up at night, those kinds of things can factor in. But yeah, it's when we really, like, Ayurveda has this beautiful way of just boiling things down to their essence. And when we look at the essence of it, it's too much depletion. They're giving too much already. They don't have more to give.
It's really interesting. Okay, so then how do you fix that? Is it just the self-love, self-care, filling yourself back up, taking time for yourself, doing what you love? And does food play a part in that as well?
Definitely, definitely. All of those things, diet, lifestyle. Sometimes, we can use herbs as a stopgap measure. Ayurveda doesn't advocate for long-term use of herbs. We might use an herb for 3 months to try to help bring the body back into balance. But all of those things are going to be playing a factor. What's the daily routine like? And how can we the morning time is considered to be the most potent time of day for self-care in Ayurveda. It's almost like we can line it up with birth. Things that happen to us when we're really young can have a very long-lasting impact. Whereas things that happen to us, when we're middle-aged, we're a little bit more resilient, we can brush it off. So similar with the day, we can kind of overlay that same sort of cycle on the day, and how we start our day off, what our morning is like, really plays a big role in what the rest of our day is going to be like. So taking some time for self-care first thing in the morning. There's a lot of different nourishing practices in Ayurveda. One of the most celebrated ones is self-oil massage, which in Ayurveda we call it abhyanga. And it's basically rubbing yourself down from head to toe with oil using, sesame, coconut, olive, or there's other herbal blended oils that we have in Ayurveda too that get a little bit more subtle and targeted. But giving yourself a daily self-massage from head to toe. If you can't do it every day, a few times a week, fitting it in when you can. And you do it before you take a shower, and then get in the shower. The warm shower opens your pores, allows that oil to penetrate really deeply, and soothes the nervous system. In Ayurveda, there's a very close relationship between the skin and the nervous system. And so by applying this really nourishing oil, which the word for oil in Ayurveda, in Sanskrit, the language of Ayurveda, is sneha. And that is also the same word for love. So this daily practice is considered an act of self-love, where it's like you're putting on your own oxygen mask before you go out and help everyone else. So that can be one really powerful practice to kind of rejuvenate yourself. Other things that a lot of times I suggest to clients are alternate nostril breathing, working with the prana, the breath. And that's another thing that you can do first thing in the morning for 5 to 15 minutes. Just alternate nostril breathing.
Well, how do you do that?
And it's very simple. You just basically start by closing off. I always start with closing off the right nostril and inhaling up the left. And then just before exhalation, you switch and exhale out the right.
Wow.
Then you inhale up the right, and just before exhalation, switch, exhale out the left. And ideally, I actually just put a demo video on my Facebook profile of how to do it. So if anybody wants to check it out, it's there and handy. I can even send you the video if you wanted to post it. But it's a very simple practice, and you just set a timer for 5 to 15 minutes. Initially, when you're first starting doing it, maybe you do it for 1 or 2 minutes to kind of get in the groove, because if you did it for 15 minutes right off the bat, it would feel like it's taking forever. But that again serves to to balance these dual forces within the body, and really center yourself. It's an opportunity and to really bring your attention and your focus into your center, rather than, in the day, we're going so much outward. We're worried about what everyone else is doing and needs from us. And this is just a short, simple practice to check in with ourselves, move prana, move life force throughout the body, and and kind of like rejuvenate and recharge. So that can be another really supportive practice for hormone balancing that I use a lot with clients. And then, of course, diet, eating a diet appropriate for your body type, depending on whether you're more vata, pitta, kapha. We all have all three of these doshas within us. We just have our own sort of unique cocktail. And so coming to understand what yours is and what your body needs are, you develop your diet around that. And then, a good lifestyle as well, healthy habits, good exercise for your body type, good routines in the morning, in the evening, that sort of thing, healthy relationships. All of that comes into play as well.
It's interesting. I'm going to go back to the sex. So
Okay.
we spoke about it for, because all of that makes sense. And I guess you sort of answered that question in that anyways. So going back to somebody who's having, a difficulty with libido, it goes back to everything that you've just said, the self-care, the filling up, the breathing, taking time for self, the diet, the exercise, all of that has to be taken care of first and has to have sort of like its place in your day-to-day regime for sex to even come onto the table. Yeah.
Generally speaking, yes. And especially for women who are perimenopausal, like around 35. A lot of times we can get away with
That's me.
Yeah, we can get away with a lot up to 35 as women, because our bodies are still young and juicy, and we haven't taxed ourselves too much yet. But then around age 35, our hormones start shifting, our sex hormones start shifting. And what I notice, menopause, it's like it really hits hard. If you haven't been taking care of yourself well over the course of your life, you can have, depending on your genetics and other things too, but it can be a rougher transition into menopause, which, from an Ayurvedic perspective, menopause is a very natural thing. It should be smooth, easy. But yeah, if we're constantly pulling from our reserves, it's like we're charging this credit card, on a daily basis. Like, now I'm going to borrow, I'm going to borrow, I'm going to borrow, I'm going to borrow. At some point, the debt collector comes, and those are usually the key times where we start to feel like, oh, I'm not invincible. I can't do everything for everyone and not feel any consequence from it.
Okay, that's interesting. So your sleep hacks then, and if you talk to me about sleep hacks that sort of help to balance and round you, but also to help for me with sleep right now, I'm looking at it, because I'm getting older, I'm looking at it from a point of view of how can I beautify or use this time, because I've noticed I've started getting like bags under my eyes because my sleep is not ideal, or I'm starting to get like little pimples. So I know why it's happening. But talk to me about how you can use sleep as an opportunity to repair, rebalance, restore, and to beautify from an Ayurvedic perspective.
Yeah. So again, this idea of duality, sleep is very nourishing. It's rejuvenating, and it's an important time for our body to detox. While we're sleeping, our organs are busy doing a lot of house cleaning. Not taking that time for getting good deep sleep. When you say you have pimples, it's like, yeah, the liver is taxed, because the liver has to process everything we take in on a daily basis. And when we're not giving it its well-deserved time to rest, it's still taking stuff in, and it doesn't have time to like vacuum and take out the trash and, wash the dishes and do all that kind of housekeeping. So again, in terms of sleep hacks, the biggest one is going to be, how's the balance of stress versus support in your life, and can you is there room to invite more support and reduce stress? The other is next on the list would be what I wouldn't say necessarily in these are in any kind of order, but the sanctity of your bedroom. So what's the light in your bedroom like? Ideally, you want it to be cool, dark, quiet, devoid of distractions or any stressors. You might employ sleep masks, earplugs, sound machine, dark curtains, any of those things. What's your nighttime routine like? Generally, it's ideal to eat a light and early dinner of just the right amount for your body type and your physical activity in the day. You know, Ayurveda recognizes that for those of us who live a more sedentary life, we don't need to consume as big a meal as somebody who's doing, you know, hard physical labor all day. So eating the right amount, and having lunch be your main meal of the day and dinner a lighter meal. And ideally, we're done with our dinner before sundown so that our body has a time to kind of digest that and process it before we're going right to bed. Electronics and stimulation in the evening time, those play a big part in terms of sleep hacks. So, you know, stopping work at a specific time, having a cutoff time, maybe when that cutoff time comes around, you know, I like to tell clients, set it as an appointment on your calendar and get, you know, a phone reminder. It's time to wind down. You're done. And, you know, create a to-do list for the next day of whatever you didn't get done and just let it go. Know that it'll be there when you wake up in the morning and you need to recharge. And shifting your focus to more relaxing activities, spiritual reading, relaxing music, meditation, a warm bath, any of those kind of nourishing options. Oiling the feet and the head, as I mentioned. It's also nice if, you know, to get and receive a massage in those areas. If you've got a willing partner, this can be a nice practice for you each to do with each other. Give yourself a nice foot massage with oil, or give each other a nice foot massage with oil and a gentle head massage with oil, like an hour or so before bed, so that by the time it's time for bed, you're starting to feel that heaviness. Warm milk with a few pinches of nutmeg is a really simple little Ayurvedic sleep remedy. And with that, we wouldn't necessarily consider that like a medicine or an herbal supplement that you should only take for 3 months. That's more of a food. And so, you know, you just warm up some milk, like literally 1 cup of milk. This isn't meant to be like a giant mug of milk, because milk is heavy to digest. And so you don't want to give the body too much work to do while you're sleeping. But, you know, a small cup of warm milk with a few pinches of nutmeg, great, especially for Vata types. Asana, Pranayama, meditation, Yoga Nidra, those can all support good sleep, whether you do them in the evening or if you can fit them into the morning, that's great. Meditation has been shown to increase our serotonin levels, which plays a big role in our ability to get to sleep. You can even, you know, practice a mindful meditation in bed with just focusing on your breath and extending the exhalation. The exhale is considered to be more relaxing and nourishing in Ayurveda. The inhale is more, and in yoga, the inhale is more stimulating and invigorating. So, you know, if you're laying in bed and you're just thinking about extending the exhalation and bringing your focus, your attention to your breath, a lot of times this can be helpful for Pitta types where they need something to focus on, because if they don't focus on their breath, they're going to be focusing on their to-do list and, you know, what they're trying to achieve the next day. Another really sweet, simple practice is a warm bath with lavender in the evening time to help wind down. I find this is great for kids. Kids are so sensitive to essential oils. You put a few drops of lavender in their bathtub And I've seen it work wonders, where, you know, they're just out and drowsy, ready for bed. And then there are, you know, some herb supplements that can be useful in, as like a stopgap measure while you're kind of recalibrating, getting other things in order. Passion flower is a really nice one. That's a Western herb that probably you'd have it in London, it would grow, I would guess, easily also. So that one could be a nice time, a nice one for nighttime. Lavender as an essential oil or as a tea, so you could have it as a diffuser, you know, diffusing in the house, or put a few drops of lavender oil on the temples and on the soles of the feet. Magnesium is another one that can be useful with sleep issues. Usually if somebody's deficient in magnesium, they're also going to be constipated, and they might notice kind of a restlessness in their legs, and it's likely that they pee a lot throughout the day. So if that sounds like you might get a magnesium supplement for the evening time. There's a nice one called Calm that you just stir into some water and take before bed, and that can be useful for sleep as well.
You're giving some really good information. So to wrap up, because I'm already like looking at all the things I'm going to be adding into my basket on Amazon. So serious. Sesame oil, nutmeg. I never use nutmeg. That's definitely going to happen. I've got magnesium in the bathroom, like the spray. And then the lavender, like I used to give Vivi lavender baths. Have stopped doing that, but I think that's a really good thing to do as sort of a nice bedtime routine. So that's been really, really helpful. Where can people, first of all, do you do consultations? And if people wanted to do a consultation with you, can they do so? How do you work? Where do people find you?
Yeah, I do one-on-one consultations. I'm also getting ready to launch like a 3-month program with a little mini e-course and group coaching and one-on-one consults all incorporated.
Okay. What is it?
So what's that?
What's the program about?
So basically for women looking to support hormone health, it's going to be really focused on that. And like I said, it'll be a 3-month program with a like a self-paced course, some group coaching, and then also some one-on-one consultations. So if you want to have that whole package, stay tuned for that. That's coming this summer. We're still tweaking a few things about it. But the best way to connect with me is either Facebook. You can just find me, Kimberly Kubicke, Kimberly, and my last name is K-U-B like boy, I-C-K-E. So you can connect with me on there. I also have a website, www.kimberlykubicke.com. And you can email me at health@kimberlykubicke.com with any questions or feedback you have about the talk, or if you want to connect and set something up. And all of my contact info is also on my website. So yeah, I would love to.
It's really good. That was really interesting. I'm definitely going to reach out because you know, when you do these, you speak with people who work in different parts of the industry. I've never touched Ayurveda. I think I have a book about it somewhere here in my house, but I've never gone into it. And I think it's really good to understand yourself from a different type of practice, and because you always pick up little gems, and you could apply it, and everything that you've said here it's completely natural and it makes sense. So thank you so very much. It's been an absolute pleasure. And we kind of went off course a little bit, but my brain is like, it's buzzing. So that's been amazing. So I will put this out, and then hopefully people will connect with you and do consultations or join your program or take up some of the recommendations or that you've given, or follow you on social media, because this has been amazing. So from my heart to yours, thank you so very much for taking the time out to do this. It's been like absolutely amazing connecting with you.
Likewise. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much. I will connect with you soon. Have a lovely evening ahead. And thank you again.
You too. Take care, Nora.
Bye.
Bye-bye.